Morning Joel with you here at your home in the country, AM 860 FM 95.1, broadcasting live from the Hy-Vee studios. A special guest on the phone line with us today, Alda, star of MASH, Hawkeye Pierce. Got a new book coming out. Alan, welcome to Iowa.
Thank you very much. Glad to be in Iowa.
You know, you've got the new book coming out.
If I understood you, would I have this look on my face?
Yeah.
Right.
That's a great title. And,
Thank you. It wasn't the original title. The first title I came up with, because it's a book about communication, about people understanding one another. And my first title was, Huh? And the editor said, that isn't the worst title I ever heard. So I thought about it some more and came up with this title.
And so you've got this book title. It's coming out on June 6th. What was it about the communications arts that drew you to them? I know that you've studied them extensively, and it's a big part of your science background and your scientific research. What was it about how we're communicating today that was inspired you to write the book?
It was interesting. I had been spending about 8 years helping scientists and doctors communicate better. A center I started at Stony Brook University we've trained about 8,000 scientists and doctors, and I began to realize from what they were telling me that it applies to more people than just those two groups. One scientist said to me that this training saved my marriage. And I thought, this is really something that applies to everyone from the boardroom to the bedroom. And I started exploring all the different ways it could be slightly adapted to help us all communicate better, and whether it's in business or in the home, between two people who make up a couple, or parents and children. And the funny thing is that people are coming to me who are reading the book. It comes out on June 6th, but a few people have read the book already. And it really, it's so good to hear that people are using it and making progress with it, and getting closer to one another, understanding ways. You know, it's really important because businesses run better with better teamwork, and this just makes teamwork Zoom. But marriages work better with teamwork. Let's say it's midnight and the man's wife is asleep already, and he passes by the kitchen sink and he sees a pile of dishes, and he thinks, I guess I ought to do something about that. I don't know what the odds are that he'll actually do something, but they're higher if he has a little moment of thinking about what's going on in her head the next morning when she looks at the sink and has a moment of disappointment. Then the odds are a little higher from that little bit of empathy that he might actually take action. Take action on what he would like to do, because empathy doesn't make you a good person all by itself. I think you have to have an impulse toward empathy. Empathy is used by bullies as well. You know, they know how to make you feel bad. Empathy is a great tool for doing what helps you get connected to another person, which is, for me, that's the essence of communication.
And we're so connected now with technology, but we don't seem to know how to talk to one another anymore.
I know we do have a kind of a disconnect, even greater than we had before, because when we were face to face, we didn't know how to talk to each other as well as we could either. But now so many of us, I mean, I see kids, teenagers sitting on a couch about a foot from each other, and they're texting each other instead of talking. But, you know, even in emails, you can communicate better if you have in mind what's going on in the other person's mind as they read it. Because we all get so many emails that are hard to understand because the people assume that what they're saying is perfectly understandable. And for me, you know, when I was talking about thinking of the man's wife and what she'd feel, that's the essence of communication. Is what is this other person going through as I talk to them? At least that's the essence of it, in terms of what I think I've found in the last few decades working on this. If all you're thinking about is what you want to communicate, like the scrambled email that we all send sometimes, but instead think of what the person reading it is going through as they see each sentence or each fragment. There's a greater chance that they'll get it because you're taking into account what they're going through, what they're thinking and feeling, and we'll have fewer examples of people misunderstanding, like the grandmother who's supposed to have said, I don't know if it really happened, but she's supposed to have said, Granddad died today. I'm so sorry to say that. LOL. And thinking that LOL meant lots of love, but she didn't know what was going on in the other person's head.
Now, with your training in acting and your career as an actor, you mentioned empathy and you mentioned communicating, understanding the other person. Is that comes kind of from your acting background, where it's not just you knowing your lines, but knowing how your lines fit into the context of the entire story?
No, that's exactly right. That you just really hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned, because the experience I had as an actor, learning to be an actor, learning to be a competent actor, involved understanding that it wasn't just saying my lines because I knew the lines. I had learned them and I knew I had decided how I was going to say them. That's really just thinking about myself and not being responsive to the other person. On the other hand, what I learned to do and what was valuable to me was to realize that the actor doesn't say the next line because it's in the script. He says it because the other actor makes him say it. It makes him say it, not only say the line, but say it a certain way. And that can change from night to night depending on what the other actor is giving him. So that interaction is really the essence of communication for me, because I can't respond to the other person unless I'm letting them into my conscious mind, really observing them, watching their body language, hearing their tone of voice. And then we're connected. And then I have a better chance of knowing what's going on in their head, which means I've got a little more empathy that I can use to say something that will benefit both of us. Because what's the difference if I have the perfect message to deliver, but it doesn't land on the other person? They can't accept it. It doesn't have anything to do with what they're going through. It matters what we say, but it matters even a little more how the other person is getting it. So that's why I care so much about empathy and observing the other person and paying attention. It's a little bit. I think it's a sort of a new idea. It's an old idea in that it's know your audience, but it's a new idea in that there's more attention to be paid on what the other person is thinking and feeling. That's really the most important part of communication, I think.
And is that what draws you to a project like Horace and Pete with Louis C.K., which was such a unique example that hadn't really been done before, where it's kind of this guerrilla approach to a TV show or a miniseries? Is that what draws you to that kind of work that Louis C.K. was able to write?
You know, what drew me to it was what he was able to write. He wrote. He's a brilliant writer, I think, and he's a wonderful actor, and it turns out he's a really good director too. And I think he's all of those things because he's tuned in to what you're experiencing. And certainly as a director, he's very aware of what the actor is going through, and he doesn't just tell them things that he wants them to know or to do. He works with what the other person is coming up with. All the great directors do that. And it's a respect for the creative process of the actor who's going through it, and a weaker director will think it's just fine to tell you move your pinky here when you say that line, and all your attention goes into trying to do what the other guy wants rather than what's coming up out of your own creative sources. So he's a wonderful director, but the writing was just wonderful in Horace and Pete. I was so happy to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's a tremendous show. I actually got hooked on it a few months ago and just finished it a couple weeks ago. So tremendous work. It's work that we don't always see you in that more dramatic and somewhat intense role. We obviously all know you so well from being Hawkeye Pierce on MASH, but this new book, If I Understood You, Would I Have This Look on My Face? My Adventures in the Art and Science of Relating and Communicating. It's available on June 6th. I'm sure it's going to be an outstanding read. It's not what is it about writing? This is your second or third book that you've written.
It's the third book. Yeah, I love writing, and interestingly, while I was writing this book, I think more than ever, I was aware of the person reading, and it was a really interesting experience. And I think it led to some instances where I could make difficult concepts, because sometimes I get into the science behind some of these things that I claim are important to communication, and not everybody's comfortable reading about science, and I think I was able to make it accessible to a wide range of people without dumbing it down. I tried very hard to keep it accurate, but I was able to do it to the extent I was able, because I had the reader in mind, and I was thinking, taking the place of the reader. Am I getting this? Does this sentence really follow the sentence I just said, or am I jumping around? And I was really careful not to put down a sentence that made you have to go back and reread it to see what the sentence was about, for goodness sake, which I have to do a lot when I read about science.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time here with us in Iowa this morning. Thank you so much, Alan Alda, for joining us this morning.
Thank you. It was fun talking with you.
I appreciate it. Good luck with the book. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.